to the Fantasy Edge podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dell, here to talk all things Dynasty rankings, extravaganza, risers, fallers, trade targets, etc. post-draft. Joined by a special guest today. He is Chad Parsons. You can find him on X at Chad Parsons NFL. He is the founder of UTH Dynasty. That's Under the Helmet Dynasty, which you can find him also with his rookie guide at patreon.com/UTH. Chad, really appreciate you hopping on. I know we did a show a couple years ago. We had a really good Dynasty chat then. I'm glad that we could reconnect here. Before we kind of dive into things, we'll go position by position, talking about guys we're higher and lower on versus consensus. I'll show my rookie rankings as well. Really appreciate you having you on and kind of tell me, like, what are you guys working on right now? I know you're heavy in the Dynasty streets. What can we find over at UTH Dynasty, whether it's on social, Patreon, or the website right now?
Yeah, one of my claims to fame is by the end of draft weekend, I mean, everything's got to be scrubbed up. We got people starting rookie drafts that Sunday, and so it really is a 60 to 72-hour sprint from Friday all the way through Sunday. And the thing that I've pledged for 10 years is, I don't go to sleep on Sunday night until the rookie draft guide's done, the rankings, the updates there, the trade calculator, everything. Put the subscriber, put the listener, put the super fan first, and that was most efficient year ever for me. So I feel like I'm getting better at this process. And here's the other thing that I just really enjoy is we're in rookie draft season. And for as much as people hand wring and said, I hate this class, we heard that as a drumbeat for 4 straight months. I came out of it, and you never know what the market's going to say, because that's, price is going to enforce everything for what you think about a player and for a strategy. But I came out of it with a really clarified plan. I was excited about putting that into action for listeners and subscribers. And we'll talk about some of those players here that, it's a really good opportunity, whether it's a quote unquote great class by consensus or a poor class. And that's what people are classifying 2026 as. I just am excited because it's a game. We have to solve the game. And so your valuations, combine that with cost of players. And now what's the refined plan of where to trade, where to go into, where the tier breaks. And honestly, I came out of it saying there's target players and zones throughout 3-4 rounds of a typical draft in a variety of formats, which makes you excited because that's not always the case. And frankly, you get a reality test in March, and we didn't know if we were going to get there, or some people never got there, which that is kind of depressing. If you go into May rookie draft saying I don't like anything, that's a tough environment to try to succeed, whether it's trading or drafting players.
Yeah, I agree 100%, right? It's all about price. It's all about context, roster needs, strengths. I think I've come away saying, like, okay, let's break down on how we're exactly reviewing this class. It's like not exactly a bad class versus a good class. I think that there are a lot of hidden gems in the wide receivers and tight ends in this class. I think quarterback is very thin. I think running back is very thin, but I do think there's a lot of PPR value to be had in the pass catchers. And we'll talk some rookies here today. We'll talk some overall dynasty. I just released, if you didn't catch it yet, go to my Twitter or at bettingpredators.com. You can catch the link to my Dynasty top 300 rankings and tiers, as well as my top 100 rookie rankings and tiers. I know Chad over at uthdynasty.com, you've got rankings for Dynasty, rookies, and Devi, as well as your UTH trade calculator. You've also got charts for QB injury away, RB injury away, and your podcast as well. We can dive into things here. Obviously, you talked about doing the rookie guide, so you're really heavy in the streets right now with prospect modeling, analyzing post-draft landing spots, et cetera, et cetera. We'll start with QBs, and we'll try to we'll go 2-3 players each per position. Try to go 5 per position overall of guys we're higher and lower on versus the market. I'll pull up my dynasty rankings here in a second as well. When we're talking about the quarterback position specifically, I think it seems to me like tier 1 is a clear tier of the young buck Drake May and the old wily vet Josh Allen, right? And who comes after that? I don't know. I think Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, those guys all have reason to be in that second tier. Caleb Williams, Jackson Dart, Jaden Daniels, maybe even a Bo Nix. I'm higher than the market on Trevor Lawrence as well. Are there any guys once we get past kind of that top 2, or do you think it's a different top 2? Who's one guy maybe you're higher on than the market right now at the quarterback position in Dynasty heading into 2026?
Well, just to delineate one thing, I mean, I have Josh Allen in a tier by himself.
Okay,
I am one that I remember the Derek Carrs and the Jameis Winstons and the CJ Strouds, and like we have so many first, second, third year, just young green quarterbacks, and I have to remind myself every offseason that while we get excited, Jaden Daniels is a great example from a couple years ago. Just remember, it's one of the most diabolically difficult positions in all of sports, and so when we have the opportunity to have a bigger sample size and not just 500, 750, 1,000 dropbacks in the NFL, guys that have been there, done that, and you're going to have down seasons, you're going to have frustrating exits in the postseason, and that drips over to fantasy and dynasty. And just as much as I love Drake May, he was my most drafted player that year. I was all on the arbitrage of not Caleb Williams, go Drake May. And that just, we highlight good classes and bad classes. I mean, Drake May at, what was it, 105, 106, 107 in that year's class. I think it was 6 and 7. You could just auto draft Drake May that year. And now we transpose over. I mean, he's a superior prospect to Fernando Mendoza, and you got to spend 102, 103. So just that is the difference, and why you have to have a good historical lens on, is this a good pick? Is this a good profile historically at this draft spot? So that can lead you to some answers, when you're in your rookie drafts. But yeah, so as much as I love Drake May, I have him in a second tier, and Josh Allen alone, just because he's 30, he's not dead. I am pretty resistant to age at the quarterback position. Like, I wouldn't consider someone old until we have seen massive erosion for their rushing production. And, we get to the point where there is a difference. And I will say, like, if we say right now Josh Allen is 35, people are going to start moving him down, regardless of how he finished, regardless of how his play is, just because of age. And I do think in general that's a mistake. I think it's very difficult to get 2 or 3 quarterbacks on your roster that you really like, and you have a 2 to 3 year trajectory and you think they're relatively bulletproof, and their down year is like quarterback 15. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes is the type that, I mean, he's now going in the mid-second round of startup drafts, sometimes the later second round. And that's offensive because he's been there, done that. He's the exact type. His worst season has still been as a QB1. And he's the glaring one that I say every sign is pointed to he's earlier than expectation. I think we just saw the schedule release. They were leaking out that, what is it, September 14th, we've got Broncos versus Chiefs. And who's on the logo there? Who's on the avatar? We've got Patrick Mahomes. He's like minus 700 or something to start week 1. So everything, you don't think they're talking to the Kansas City Chiefs? So they're busy with this expectation that he's going to be the week 1 starter, and Justin Fields is not. We're not going to get one random Justin Fields start, I don't think. And so he's 30 years old, same thing, bulletproof, and people are pushing him down now. So I would highlight Patrick Mahomes of just the injury discount, the get through the offseason, and his health has been the focal point, not so much drafting some, they didn't draft Jordan Tyson in the top 10. They address defense, and I think they can still, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes and getting things together. And I'm excited about Kenneth Walker there. So I just think in general, of the first 5, 6, 7 guys that come off the board in a super flex draft or in the first 2 or 3 tiers, I think Patrick Mahomes is still the guy. You got to kill the king. And there's a lot of young guys that you mentioned that, I mean, Jackson Dart, there are people drafting Jackson Dart and Bo Nix ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And if you just put that face value, to me, that's very, very historically risky.
Yeah, no, I really like the call out. I have Patrick Mahomes as my dynasty QB5. The consensus rankings has him as QB6, so I'm one spot ahead. I've got, and I agree with you on the Allen call out, right? Because like he hasn't shown any decline in his rushing ability, and I think there could be an argument for May or Allen at this point if you're looking long term versus shorter, quote unquote shorter term. I've got Lamar 3, Burrow 4, Mahomes 5. The guy I'm highest on in this tier compared to the consensus is Trevor Lawrence. And to me, it's all about the new scheme fit, the new regime in Jacksonville with Liam Cohen. And we finally saw Trevor Lawrence start to break through last year and really live up to that number 1 overall pick. I think when you look at Trevor Lawrence and the pieces that they have, right? Like Travis Hunter, elite draft capital last year. now we're questioning whether he's going to play DB or receiver more. I think if anything, that shows us that Jacksonville starting to look borderline loaded at pass catcher, right? You look at Brian Thomas, hopefully there's a bounce back season there as well. We saw the emergence of Parker Washington. Jacoby Myers is there. You've got Brenton Strange. Now you add a talented pass catcher in the draft in Tanner Koziol, as well as a second round pick at tight end as well, who's going to be more of a hybrid blocker there too. Yes, I get it that they lost Travis Etienne, but Bhayshul Tuten should be able to slide right in there in addition to Chris Rodriguez. The pieces are there, and we saw what Liam Cohen was able to do in that offense. To me, like, assuming Lawrence stays there as the face of that franchise at just 26 years old, right? Like, we're talking about Mahomes at 30. Lawrence has almost 4 or 5 years to go until he even cracks the 30s as well. And I really like the situation there for him long term with the coaching staff. I just think overall, yeah, okay, like maybe I'm too high on him, but I'd put him right there in the mix with Caleb Williams, Jackson Dart. I would rather have Trevor Lawrence over Jaden Daniels right now, and I know that goes against the grain in terms of consensus rankers because, frankly, I don't know if I trust Jaden Daniels to stay healthy, and I don't like the situation around him in Washington right now either. So Lawrence to me is the guy that I call him a buy on my end, because if someone's treating him more as like a borderline QB2 right now in Dynasty Superflex leagues, I think he's a borderline top 5 QB asset for the next 4 or 5 years to come. So I'm with you on Mahomes, and one spot behind him, I got Trevor Lawrence right now.
I think Liam Cohen saved his career. Let's also not pull punches. I mean, he had other situations. The weapons looked promising. I mean, Parker Washington went on a tear, and you mentioned they're not done. Even if Travis Hunter is not a wide receiver, I mean, they still go deep at wide receiver. Jacoby Myers was a valuable addition for them, doubling up at tight end. So they've got a lot working for them. And it feels like he's finally becoming, last year we saw that, a facilitator, not being dragged along by his weapons, but creating weapons on his own. So I think that would be the optimistic part where we saw what Liam Cohen did in Tampa Bay, and it transferred directly over to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
One of the...
You look at just the last thing on Lawrence, you look at post-bye. Jacksonville had their bye in week 8 of last season, and that was right when they lost Travis Hunter. He had his breakout game right before the bye. They think he's going to come back soon, ends up getting ruled out for the season. 10 weeks after the bye, Trevor Lawrence had 1 week outside the QB 13 finish overall. Every other game, QB 13, QB 12, QB 11, QB 7, QB 5, 1, 2, 5, 3 to close out the season in the last 4 weeks. So I think we continue to see that momentum leak into 2026, possibly even improve. So I'm right there with you on both our guys so far.
Last higher end guy that I would mention, and he's becoming, like, a few years ago, I realized, like, every single step of the way from that point forward in his career, I was just going to be higher on Dak Prescott than everybody else. Like, and when some guy gets to his late 20s or early 30s, you kind of realize this is going to be one of my guys because the market is just not in alignment with me. And it's younger than this for this quarterback, but Brock Purdy's quickly becoming the new Dak Prescott for me. He's been top 10 in adjusted point per game finish for me in the last 3 seasons, basically the 3 seasons he started. He's not big enough, strong enough, fast enough, big enough arm, minimal pedigree. All that is going to lead to being overlooked. And he basically comes in, no one has any expectations, and they're always going to hold it against him. He gets the big contract. Everyone goes, who cares? And the 49ers are kind of a punchline for having a different draft board than everybody else. But despite all that, what do we know? It's Shanahan, it's Purdy, and they make magic. And when he talks about how half the time he doesn't see it, you know what he does see? He knows the play. He knows the feel. He still puts it, him throwing. I'm so excited about him running 18-yard deep in cuts to Mike Evans, because you know who's going to be there? Mike Evans. And you know who's going to throw it to the spot is Brock Purdy. And everything is choreographed in an offense like that. It's supposed to be very precise. That's what Trey Lance could never do. And that's why he was out the door as fast as he got in there. He just was not a fit. And this is the perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan and what he wants to do. This is his guy. So, again, we're talking about fantasy finishes. He's right there. We haven't seen QB1, but I think last year, wasn't it late in the season? He was QB1 for a stretch to close that season. And so the upside is there. he has sneaky rushing upside. And you just say they've been bit by injuries at the wrong time, but what did they do? Bring in Christian Kirk, draft a quarterback draft a wide receiver at 33 overall, bring in Mike Evans. Keep reloading. They might not trust Ricky Pearsall, and Brandon Ayuk is halfway out the door, but they keep reloading. And what do we do? Trust the system. And then if the system trusts Purdy, again, I just feel like I'm always going to be higher on him. You can get him easily in the third round of Superflex startup drafts. And in kind, that means to me, he's a discount, because I think of all these guys I don't trust in the first round of startup drafts or early second, guys like Jalen Hurts and these quarterbacks that you say, I don't know if you can play. Let's be fair. You've produced fantasy-wise. Do we trust Joe Burrow to stay healthy? And I think of the opportunities you have to get Purdy in like a first-round pick and pivot off these guys. And I call that a two-way go, because I think Purdy over the next 2 or 3 years can outscore him. And you bank the pick, you bank whatever you got in the back pocket there of that deal.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm one spot ahead consensus on Purdy right now. I got him at QB 11. His expert consensus ranking on Fantasy Pros is QB 12 in terms of dynasty rankings. But having said that, push comes to shove, like this year specifically, like give me Purdy over Nix, give me Purdy over Daniels, over Dart. He should be
26,
right
he's
in that
years old. I mean, he's
in that same Trevor Lawrence age range we just talked about, and the scheme fit, the coaching. You mentioned the talent, them drafting. Yeah, maybe they reached a little bit, but they still got the weapons: Stribling, Kalen Black, free agency, et cetera, et cetera. If Pearsall stays healthy, that's another boon for him as well. Yeah, I like to call out there. And I think for me, it's like sometimes I get trapped into that thinking of like the draft capital, right? But it's like we're so far removed from that at this point. You know, we're entering year 5 after that draft.
I know.
It's like that doesn't matter anymore.
They pay him $50+ million. I think at some point you can't call him Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, Tom Brady. I wish I could go back in time. I don't remember Tom Brady's there winning Super Bowls. At some point, did we stop talking about the draft pedigree?
Yes, exactly. And I think at age 26, it's like that's firmly out of the conversation. You know, even though he only played roughly half the season last year, you mentioned it, in the most important weeks that mattered: week 15 QB4 finish, week 16 QB1 overall, week 17 QB1 overall. I know the week 17 well, because I was in the third straight finals of my dynasty league and lost for the third straight time because I was going up against Brock Purdy, even though I entered that week as like 20+ point favorite.
Who knew he was a title game assassin? Who knew?
Be damned. Brock Purdy killed my dynasty season last year. So thank you, Brock Purdy. Yeah, I'll go to my second group here, or my second guy I'm higher on. And I don't know. I feel like I'm going to cheat because I got these two guys right in the same range. Malik Willis and Tyler Shough, to me, whether it's best ball, whether it's dynasty, whether it's redraft, I'm going to be higher on both these guys heading into 2026. I'll talk about Malik Willis first. Like, was the landing spot ideal? Absolutely not. Like, is he a proven asset? Absolutely not. But the fact remains, like, we know what he can do if he uses his legs and stays healthy, right? And of course, yeah, they traded away Jalen Waddle, but they did spend a couple early round picks on receivers in this draft. Devon Achane is still there as well. Just got the big contract extension. When we saw Malik Willis in that full start against Baltimore week 17 last year, QB3 finish overall, 18 for 21 passing, highly efficient as a passer, 9 carries, 60 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground. You look back in his previous year before that, in 2024, had a couple spot starts, essentially did the same thing, right? QB6 finish overall when he got over that 18 pass attempt range, which isn't really asking a lot for a guy like him. So I think that goes without saying that the potential of him as an efficient passer in the league should only be able to go up from here. He's had a lot of time to really learn. He's been in a good system in Green Bay. I have confidence that he's going to be able to learn and get better over time. And I think, you know, obviously when it comes to Malik Willis, you know, he's a guy where a lot of people are questioning the contract he got with Miami, but he's still in a prove it part of his career as well at that same age range of 26, like we talked about with Purdy, with Lawrence. And I think with Tyler Shough, on the other hand, that to me is like, okay, maybe he's just an average prospect at the end of the day, but he was an early round 2 pick. He is older. In this case, maybe it's not as big of a knock at 26 years old as well, because he's experienced, but he's in the exact right system we want. Like, give me all the pieces of Kellen Moore's offense. ranking near the top of the league every single week in pace of play and total snaps and total pass attempts, et cetera, et cetera. I just think at any point, like Tyler Shough, if I want to win games now, I'm totally comfortable slotting him in as my week one starting quarterback in any type of format. And I think that, yeah, he might not be a long-term dynasty asset, but you don't have to overpay for him to be a long-term dynasty asset right now. And that's why he's one of my favorite buys heading into the season.
Yeah, I had Tyler Shough as a riser, but what's strange is, and this is where the divide is. Go back to last year. I was so confounded why folks were fading him because an opportunity that was only blocked by Spencer Rattler, and he comes in and his price tag was like second round, but sometimes late second round of Superflex drafts a year ago. Now he's worth more. Expectations are a lot higher. They start building around him. They had Oscar Delp. They had Jordan Tyson. But I also think that this is a potential powder keg because you have Chris Olave stayed healthy largely for the first time. Jordan Tyson, all the hand-wringing is about how he can't stay healthy. Love the guy, by the way, so hoping he stays healthy. But you put that together with a lot of question marks. Travis Achan, they pay him, and he's been underwhelming. We're hoping for the best. Tyler Shough, that was his healthiest season we've ever, or healthiest stint since what, 19, 20 years old? I mean, let's not forget. So you have so much liquidity in the market right now for Tyler Shough. And he's the type that I sit here in May, life is glorious, things are blooming, and Tyler Shough is healthy. And I just think when he plays games, the next time he has an injury, what is going to be the dialogue? We should have seen this coming, right? And I just think also the type of players he's surrounded by, we wouldn't be surprised if 2 or 3 of them are out at any singular time. So I think this is very... it's an orchid. Yeah, do you remember, like in Washington D.C., they would call Steven Strasburg the orchid because you couldn't have cold weather, you didn't want hot weather, you could pitch exactly 6 innings. Otherwise, things went wrong, haywire. His arm would explode basically. So you called him the orchid, and I think Tyler Shough is a little bit like the orchid. So I love the IPO price, and now he's getting to the point where you can tier jump. You can use Tyler Shough to get those elusive 2027 first round picks. You probably got him as your QB 3 or 4. Let's not pretend like your dynasty roster probably needs him. You probably drafted him as complete excess. So I kind of think roster construction and what the actual action plan is, even if you like him, you have a lot of liquidity and options right now because that 27 first is insulated like heck. We might get a glorious class from like 2-3 years ago where you get 4 or 5 guys in the top 15. All of a sudden, you can just turn over to that, and you don't have to risk Shough in regular season of all the hand-wringing that things could go wrong.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to your league sentiment, right? Like how do your league mates and your opponents value Tyler Shough? Like maybe they're lower on him, or in that case, maybe you could keep him as a starter and trade the assets you have ahead of him on the roster, right? So I think that I think optionality is a big thing for sure. And I was just looking at this the other day, at least Tankathon right now. I mean, they're projecting 4 quarterbacks to be drafted in the top 10, 5 in the top 13. They also have Lenore Sellers as an early second-round pick. So we're looking at potentially 6 quarterbacks in that round 1 discussion and even 5 potential top 10 picks. Obviously, things will change between now and then. 2027 for sure. Is there, I know we talked about all guys we like so far, Chad. So to close out the quarterback position, you got to give me one guy that you're low on that you just flat out just hate with a passion right now.
Well, you're gonna make me say it. I was soft selling with Tyler Shough. Honestly, I can't get on board with Malik Willis.
Okay.
I am really so he is the classic small sample size guy. The rushing upside is immense. You saw what he was able to do. It's like on par with the best rushing quarterbacks when he actually starts games. I think I watched all those Green Bay games, and I remember going through those journeys. I thought they could not. I didn't think LaFleur could have schemed it up any better. It was prescribed half-field stuff, use his legs, easier throws. I kind of think back. You remember that Jacksonville run with Blake Bortles, and they were like a half away from beating the Patriots, and they schemed it up. It was run game. It was make things easy for Blake Bortles. Eventually, it turned into a drop-back game, and he eroded, and we know how the career goes. I think this has to be a successful year for Malik Willis. The Dolphins have all those picks. And I go back to the draft and I say, how did they help Malik Willis? They really did not. It was a deep tight end class. They drafted a blocking guy with their most notable top pick at tight end. At wide receiver, Chris Bell is basically a red shirt. He's going to be woefully behind. Maybe he plays later in the season. Caleb Douglas, nobody had that on their bingo card. And that was the weakest wide receiver core by far. And we're still talking about pairing that with a quarterback that we really don't have much of a successful sample size with him with these spotty games in one of the best systems with a bright young offensive coach. And I say they go to Miami. They're a team poised to draft a notable quarterback next year. How many games and how successful does Malik Willis have to win and be for him to ward off that competition? And I just think it's an uphill battle. Fantasy wise, there probably is going to be some good games, but I look and I say, this offense cannot be notably successful from an NFL sense, from a trail mode. Hopefully it's Jacoby Brissett like, and he just piles up production in the second half of these games. And he is liquid. He is going for first round picks. And even if you say, I'm drawing a line and I don't want guys after 108 or 110 or whatever, I would embolden you to do this. Try to get to the late first, use him as a tier jumping player. So even if you get to the pick or you use Willis, maybe you're moving Willis plus a mid-second and you're getting to a meaningful zone in the first round. If I could use that to get Ty Simpson, I'm getting insulated. If I can get higher than that and get someone in the mid-first round, if I can get a 27 first, that might be more difficult. But I think of all these things. You're going to see Malik Willis at moments this year have to play true quarterback on a bad offense. And I am a little scared with how that's going to look. And if you were telling me right now he's like 205 or 210 equivalency in price, I'd say hold him and let it burn, baby. But when guys get to first round and you have these type of questions, I think you have to at least say, what's out in the space for me? And it might be August. It might be when the shoe drops and someone in your league has an injury. Right now, everyone feels great. Daniel Jones is going to be awesome. And you keep going down. Kyler Murray is going to be awesome. So everyone feels pretty good about their quarterback group. Let us get closer to the season, and hopefully you can find someone that you can now create more liquidity with that spot.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, like, obviously price matters here, and we're kind of going head to head. I'm going to give Malik Willis more the benefit of the doubt, but it's a terrible situation. I agree. I think the legs will more than make up for it, but there is a lot of downside. I look at him differently than Justin Fields, but I can totally see. Obviously, that's within his range of outcomes as well as flopping it in a starter year, like post Bears Justin Fields, or even Fields with the Bears as well. Didn't make it that long either. So yeah, no, I definitely hear you there. When it comes to super flex, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, I would totally rather have a first round pick compared to Malik Willis, but it just depends on where others are viewing him in that sense. Where are you seeing? Because like I'm looking at right now super flex dynasty ADPs, and I'm seeing Malik Willis pretty far down the board. I think maybe more in like the pick 760 to 70 range.
He's in dynasty trading. He's going for first. Like that is fully within the range. So
I can't get that far, man.
Okay,
that's a little.
So we do agree. See, this is where it's fun to find the middle of like. So again, I think the market's too high, and again, it might just be what he's drawing in trades more so than where folks generally have him ranked.
Okay. I'm looking at, and then maybe there's a better resource for me to look at, but I'm looking at Draft Sharks ADP Dynasty Superflex. They're showing Malik Willis at pick 93. I've got him as my QB 16. So like maybe, and I would get why most people would think that's maybe too high. Maybe he should be in the tier behind that.
If he's quarterback 16, I'm just saying you should be throwing out seconds for him, and you'll probably, if you throw out a couple seconds, you'll probably get him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the consensus has him QB 24 in Dynasty right now. I mean, I'm gonna be bullish in redraft and best ball because the one season upside alone I'm willing to buy on. Yeah. He's going to be lower in my Dynasty ranks considerably versus the best ball and redraft. So it's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm glad that we talked.
Yeah, the 1 year versus a 2 to 3 year trajectory is far different, and Malik Willis is a highlight player for that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's go into running backs here. I'll let you start off. We kind of have top tier obviously with Bijan and Gibbs. After that, I think a lot of debate can enter into the discussion here with who is actually in tier 2, right? Jeremiyah Love, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, James Cook. Are you putting Kenneth Walker in there? Are you putting Genty, Brees Hall, Marion Hampton, etc.? Any of the guys in this kind of like top 10 to 12-ish range or higher or lower on versus the market right now in Dynasty?
Yeah, I would say at running back, I'm a lot more sensitive to age. When
Yeah.
someone gets to 26, 27, they have a much tighter window to say you have to be elite. You can't have a down season. And when you have a down season, market value wise, it could be catastrophic. So you look at guys that I love, you mentioned James Cook or Jonathan Taylor, guys like that. I just can't have them that high. I don't even have them in tier two. For me, it's the young guns. And we've got a lot of young guns with elite pedigree. And so you look at what has come in recent years. Achan with that new contract. I mean, it pronounced there. So he's the old guy at 25, but you look at elite PPR and pass catching ability. So that allegiance with Miami, and however the season goes, we've seen bludgeoningly volume infused production for Achan, and then you go over to next year, might have a new quarterback, and everything looks a lot better for Miami. So I really, he's the oldest guy that I trust, and I think tier two is a combination of Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, and then I would also have Jeremiyah Love in there at 21 years old. So he's gonna have a lot of latitude. And I think a good example that I think is instructive for folks is Ashton Genty last year. It was pretty much the worst situation how it worked out around him we could have possibly imagined. And yet still we saw a few big games. You saw when he got almost any help from the blocking, what happened. And it was a highlight reel. Like those moments were breathtaking. And he was still a grind your way, not pretty running back two in fantasy. So it wasn't pretty, but they improved their offensive line. They improved their offense. Like everything is looking better. And it's always like, can you go from worst possible to like middling? Like that's actually a big leap for an offensive line / offense. They didn't improve wide receiver, which is a frustration of mine. But again, you get Mendoza in the building. You get they paid up for Linderbaum. I think that's huge for the offensive line. And Ashton Genty, it just can't be that bad. And he's 22. So I look at all those factors, and the tier two for me is what young guys do I think can actually make the jump and be tier one and rub shoulders with Gibbs and Robinson. That's and if they're younger by a year or two, that can be how they kind of get there. Can they have a top 10 finish and be a year or two younger? And that has a valid argument in Dynasty where we're looking at a 6-7 year window of their prime. And can we really encapsulate, because 1 or 2 seasons at running back is a big deal. A 26-year-old versus a 24-year-old is a big deal when you look at career arcs and what they have left. So I look at guys like Genty, I'm overly high on him. Omarion Hampton, I think, might be the biggest option that last year you saw moments. And I just think the Chargers, macro-wise, are a team that you want to get on board with. Like, don't let it leave the station. I think the offensive line is going to be, if they can just be healthy with their tackles, but Hampton showed to be elite last year in moments. And now you're looking at a guy that, Herbert and Hampton are the two that I just think we might get to the 3rd, 4th week of the season and we're like, this was the easy button answer. And I've seen a number of rookie drafts. Heck, I've done this where you have 101. Okay, I love Jeremiyah Love, but man, I was able to get like a mid-first and Omarion Hampton. And I'm like, I think Hampton might just be better, like especially the situation and set up for success in the next year or two. So I look at all those factors, and there's definite love to Genty and love to Hampton arbitrages where I've seen people give pluses, and I have both of those other guys higher.
Yeah, I definitely hear. I'm 2 spots of. I've got Jeremiyah Love as my dynasty RB3 behind Bijan and Gibbs. I've got Achan 4.
Can I ask one question about that? Again, I love Jeremiyah Love. Are you a little concerned that he wasn't really a workhorse or a foundational back in a lot of the senses of these other backs in college? Are you a little worried that he basically has to be Gibbs-like in terms of that dual production? Do we trust him to, like what, how do you get foundation backs in the NFL? They were foundation backs in college, right? I mean, they sort of have a DNA of I've done this. I have just a little thing in the back of my head that if we see Jeremiyah Love not quite be that guy or break down a little bit, we haven't really seen a big enough sample size. He was splitting work, and you look at the overall volume, it wasn't probably as high as we would have liked.
Yeah,
Quibbling.
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, obviously a top 3 pick stands on its own. Elite athleticism with 99th percentile 40-yard dash, 98th percentile speed score, 95th percentile college yards per carry. even a good 76 percentile college target share, and then elite college dominator rating at Notre Dame. Even though it was much more of a slower paced offense, played 12 games in 2025 versus only versus 16 games in 2024. But we saw even in 12 games compared to 16, the rushing attempts went up by 36 total, 200 plus rushing yards. So was much more efficient, even in his yards per reception as well, and had a career high in target share there. So I like the progressions there and the athleticism and the draft capital. I think my biggest concern for him is just, it might be a little bit of a rocky start because, you got Tyler Algier there that could steal goal line carries that are probably going to be very few and far between.
If he can steal it from Brashawn Robinson, he could probably steal it from Jeremiyah Love, right? The frustration is now just moving from Atlanta to Arizona. And for people that don't like Tyler Algier, yeah.
And Arizona's gunning for high picks next year. So, like, if they pull the plug on the season, like, could we see week 12 on Tyler Algier is just the starter and Love is
right.
Being
or Love's getting 10 touches a game or right.
So that's my biggest concern for redraft. But I really do like Love a lot as a prospect in terms of his athletic measurables, his receiving profile, even though it wasn't an extremely high usage environment, because Jadarian Price is also a very good running back as well.
And I'm mainly talking about the quibbles of, like, again, not that we're moving off of 101 in rookie drafts, but it's more of the, are we sure we should have him over Genty or Hampton or, Achan, considering some of these, I just, again, the pedigree's there. I just have this little glimmer of, if you're breaking ties within tiers, that we do have a nice 5-6 dynasty running backs up at the top, all young, and he's the incoming guy trying to steal luster and get up there to tier 1.
Yeah, and you mentioned, like, the age gap too, because he's 20, Genty's 22, Hampton's 23, Travion Henderson's 23, so you're getting that good age discount there as well. I think Achan, I love Achan, and, like, if you want to flip a coin and pick one versus the other, like, I'm gonna have Achan ranked considerably higher in my redraft rankings heading into 2026 than Love. Like, that's without question. But I'm thinking 3 years ahead, Love's going to be 23, Achan's going to be 27, Achan's a little bit of a smaller back, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about long-term there with Love. But
over the next 2 seasons, Achan might be the guy that, if you stack all these guys up, he's not running back 4 or 5 or 6. He actually might be like running back 1.5. Like, if we're just doing how many points do you score over the next 2 seasons, I mean, he's right there. He's right there with anybody.
I agree. I think Achan, you could argue, is firmly in the top of that tier too, right? And I think that Love, Achan, and honestly, I think those two guys to me, like, make up the top 4, like, in addition to Bijan and Gibbs, obviously. So I don't know. Genty to me wasn't as impressive as a prospect as Love was, even though I agree with you. Like, the situation is going to improve and there's going to be value there. Same goes with Hampton. I think a lot of people got soured with the early injury last season. The usage was a little frustrating early on, but we started to see the efficiency really tick up towards the end of the season. Now Mike McDaniel's coming to town, so really like the situation there as well. And that kind of brings me to my next point. You asked me about Love's usage in college. What are your thoughts on Jadarian Price going to Seattle? 22 years old versus 20 for Love. I came away in this draft thinking, like, I don't like the player comps in different models I've looked at for Jadarian Price's prospect profile headed into the league, but he lands in a very promising situation in Seattle, first round draft capital. I'm 6 spots higher than consensus and dynasty ranks, but I don't feel like in my head I'm, like, super bullish on Price. What are your thoughts on him for year 1 and moving forward, higher or lower, et cetera? What are your thoughts on Price?
Yeah, at some point I was going to have to weasel him into a conversation at running back if you didn't bring him up. And it's crazy because in January I was like, what's this profile? The comps are horrible in my model. Right. And he was a secondary player, but all we saw for 3 or 4 months is the expected draft position kept going up. That he was the running back 2. There got to be round 1 buzz, and it's like, oh, come on, get real. And then the one team that was projected to take him essentially, and if not, he wasn't going to get round 1 pedigree. Seattle took him, and I'll just say I expected the market to come out here guns blazing in May and say, Jadarian Price, round 1 running back. We love that. We've been complaining about the class, and we finally have a profile that we can shoot through the moon. And they chose not to do it. I mean, the fact that he's going, I mean, he should be he has an argument to go 102 in one quarterbacks, and he definitely doesn't do that. He's falling behind wide receivers. He's basically been an auto pick at 106 in Superflex leagues, and sometimes Kenyon Sadiq goes ahead of him without any tight end premium, and it pushes them to 7. I've gotten him at 8 before. That should never happen with running backs, and I'm open to him with this. I never thought, if you had told me in February Jadarian Price is going to be part of your draft plan and one of your target players, I would have said, I don't believe you. I don't believe the market would react less than I would, considering round 1 pedigree, considering he got a juicy landing spot. This is not just like, let's remember, Zach Charbonnet is not a game breaker. Like, he's a good running back. This is more pedigree. Zach Charbonnet now is behind. He lost a golden opportunity because he just got superseded with more pedigree, a guy that's healthy, and he's going to have a 2 to 3 month run to earn this job, get the job, and say, Charbonnet, you got to come take touches from me. It's not going back to you, and I have to fight for touches as a 1B. So he has an opportunity to run with this thing. No offense to Emmanuel Wilson and all these other guys. I mean, Jadarian Price has a golden opportunity. And here's the thing with the model that I'll say, I've learned over the years, I've gotten old enough, you got to have context when things don't make sense. All the NFL did was talk about this guy as like a top 50 pick, minimum. Even if Seattle didn't take him, he was going. He was going early enough that we needed to take notice. But here's what I'm open to. How good can you look at a model that's based on things like market share, overall production, age-weighted production, all these things, when you are playing in your 2 most critical seasons with a number 3 pick in the draft? Right. So if you are just inferior and you don't transfer, if he had transferred somewhere, I guarantee his profile would look better. He stays there. He wants to finish his career. We could talk about all the schmaltzy stuff like Brian Robinson at Alabama, waiting his time, finally being the starter. But Jadarian Price ended up waiting, and his production and his overall profile took a hit. The NFL supersedes that at the very end and says, nope, round 1 pick. And all the people that go, oh, he's Donald Brown, he's Sony Michel, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at this saying, Jadarian Price, watch the highlights. Guy can catch the ball. He's not a stone hands like Andre Williams or one of these guys. And let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Playing behind a guy that went as high in the draft as you pretty much can go as a running back in this day and age, and saying, took away your redshirt freshman, sophomore and junior seasons, of saying, how are you going to produce unless Love misses a chunk of the season? You just are not. So I'm willing to say, throw out the comps with this. Go with your priors. Go with what that pedigree says. Round 1 running back. He's a deal in rookie drafts this year. Pretty much wherever you line up and take him beyond Love, I can validate that as a pick. And that can be over Tate. It can be over Tyson. You don't have to draft them there. Pretty much it starts at 4 or 5 and 1 quarterbacks. It starts at 5 or 6. Lemon goes ahead of him, which I think should not happen. So all these, like, I never thought I'd get to the end of the day and to be a target in rookie drafts. He's a target and a buy in my overall dynasty rankings. I just did not think we'd get here, but I'm a Price fan and I'm open for it. I usually don't, the Clyde Edwards-Helaire syndrome of like, it's a wide open depth chart. How exciting is this, to get off to a good start with your rookie pick? But here we are, and people are complaining about a bad class. Well, if you think Jadarian Price is a bad pick in the mid-first, I guess you have to allude to the fact that it's a bad class.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would absolutely take him over Kenyon Sadiq. That's without question. I think maybe we'd butt heads a little bit on Mekhi Lemon. PPR versus half PPR would make a huge difference there, obviously. But I could certainly see the argument for Price anywhere in that like 2 to 6 range overall. And yeah, like, we talked about Love being, having a high college target share percentage. Obviously, Price was extremely low, so he kind of has to prove it at this level. But, wasn't a terrible prospect. But just because he was an elite prospect doesn't mean he was a bad prospect either, right? Like, he was still above average in a lot of his workout metrics.
I think it's incomplete, right? It's kind of an incomplete grade of like, we really didn't get to see him all that much. Seattle saw enough to dive in, and we didn't. I mean, people don't like Kalen Black either, so it's like, I guess, but yet they boost up day 3 running backs. So the backs that everyone passed on 3+ times across the NFL, they like those backs a lot, which kind of perplexes me.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree on that. And it's like you can talk about all these things with historical comps, but at the end of the day, draft capital and landing spot are really good for Jadarian.
They're really important. Yeah.
Really, really important heading into 2026. in the environment he came from in Notre Dame. He knows how to step into the spotlight if needed. So yeah, I like it, and I'm definitely above market in overall dynasty rankings for 2026 as well. So anyone else going down the board, dynasty rankings that we haven't touched on, maybe a tier or two lower, veteran, rookie, etc. Any player considerably higher or lower on right now, running back?
Yeah, I'll mention one more that it's always kind of bothered me the whole offseason, and that's Bhayshul Tuten. I
Yeah.
think that in Jacksonville, they've got a lot of bodies. To me, I watched him, and I'm not a running back positional scout, but I saw a guy that was tested really well, but the positional skills are he looks like a natural runner when you look at that. And when a guy is hyper athletic, and yet he falls in the draft, and he's in these mired committees. I mean, they had LaQuinn Allen out there just to basically be a pass protector because Tuten wasn't in there. He didn't even catch passes and get targets. Like Allen was not in there. And then I look at what they did. Let's go get Chris Rodriguez. Let's give him more money than almost all of us on the outside were expecting. Chris Rodriguez with the ball in his hands as a pure runner, he's a good back. And I think this is a problem. And I look at all these things. Everyone is just looking at Travis Etienne is gone, and now Bhayshul Tuten is the big sexy guy left. And I think there's a lot of risk to having that take. So I can't be too low. I still have him in my 30s of the dynasty running back rankings, but the market is in the 20s, and that's assumptive that he's going to be a starter. I just look and I see a guy that I'm not sure he's going to be a true 3-down guy. I see that they got Chris Rodriguez. I also think that they have a deep reservoir there. They brought in Amir Abdullah, and you may laugh. I've learned my lesson to discount Amir Abdullah 5 times over. You had a story about losing to Brock Purdy. I have a story. You remember that when he was on the Raiders and he had like some of those spot starts late in the season, and Amir Abdullah ripped hundreds of dollars out of my hand because I lost him in the finals. And I kind of smirked when I saw the lineup of the guy going against me. I'm like, Amir Abdullah ripped my heart out that Sunday. So he's there. He's still a savvy guy. And I look at all these guys that can either take Rodriguez on early downs or in goal line. I look at guys that clearly can be preferred in passing situations. And I look at Jacksonville. I just think they're going to be a spread it around offense and a spread it around backfield. And Tuten right now is being anointed as the guy and easily the highest price point. And that always kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like I love the idea of Bhayshul Tuten. Don't get me wrong.
The idea.
Yeah. The idea of him, yeah, because I think
the concept.
In some of these fantasy dynasty circles last year, I remember there was a big hype train building for him. And then the story became, well, ETN's in the way. And ETN, give him credit. He had a good season, got a good contract with New Orleans. But even then, like you said, with them bringing in C-Rod, it's like actions speak louder than words. You have the coaching connection. And if Tuten can't stay on the field on third downs and earn his role as a pass catcher at the same time, LaQuinn Allen's very good at that. And C-Rod's kind of specialty is those early down, short yardage, red zone opportunities as well near the goal line. So there's going to be a lot of competition for those high value touches with Allen and Rodriguez both. And the most important thing here is that Tuten was a day 3 pick. Like, we're not talking about a round 1 pick, a round 2 pick, round 3 pick even. He's a day 2 pick overall. So there's no obligation to give him a role, to give him touches. He still has to earn it 100%. So I still believe that there's value there, but it's just that the market's shoving him up so high. It's just really hard. And that's the biggest thing that I take away from even this year's rookie running back class. I just think overall in Dynasty, it seems like this year at the very least, like running backs being overvalued a ton. Especially with some of the later round guys. Like I totally get it with Price. He was a first round pick. Even with Kalen Black as a day 2 pick, as some late round value, but to shove Nicholas Singleton up the board as a round 5/day 3 pick in Tennessee behind Pollard and Spears, like I know we're kind of going across the board right now, but I just see a lot of people overrating RBs off a very RB heavy, successful 2025. And I'm not sure if I want to still be on that bandwagon and still kind of lean towards the pass catchers, especially in PPR with elite receivers, elite tight ends, etc. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. One guy, I'll wrap it up here with running backs. Year 2 running back is this guy was RB9 in PPR points per game last season, a half point from Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, ahead of Josh Jacobs, ahead of Kyron Williams, ahead of Javonte Williams, ahead of Omarion Hampton, Cam Skattebo. All reports say that he's going to be fully ready for OTAs. the Giants were rumored to be a contender for Jeremiyah Love, didn't end up getting him. I think Cam Skattebo showed he's a fully versatile running back at the NFL level if he stays healthy. Obviously, that's another question, but uh, I just think that I've got him right at consensus at RB21 in my dynasty rankings. I feel like when push comes to shove, he's a guy I might be willing to reach a few spots above where I have him ranked just for the pass catching upside there. I like the idea, again, the idea of what the Giants offense could be with Neighbors, with Dart, with Skattebo all healthy. So I've got him right in my borderline tier 3, tier 4 range. But I feel like I do want to take some stabs, especially in best ball drafts for the upside there with Cam Skattebo, especially in a PPR format this season.
Yeah, and once you get, if you actually do rankings and you get to like 15, 18 running backs, you realize after that point, it's a lot of kaleidoscope, see what you want to see. And Scatterbo, again, it was a Hollywood script. It was a fun offense, and that was without Neighbors in there. That was without some of the pieces that they've added, Isaiah Likely, and obviously Harbaugh at the top, coaching regime change. So Cam Skattebo, again, it is an awesome ride. Like, he's a guy you want on Sundays, and then if he went down, you don't want him on the Monday, and it's just, so let's hope he can have more durability running like his hair's on fire. And again, you get to a certain point in the rankings, and like you, I would have more of the, man, if I can get my running back 2 in redraft, that's a different discussion than saying I trust him and how the profile is going to go, and some of those durability and another injury or two, and he's going to be more damaged goods in Dynasty that people are just going to not want to mess with. That pattern that we're creating that was already kind of there, that dialogue, and it just continues. That would be the concern, because right now you do have some options, to kind of pivot around. My model likes him, but I would just say, like, spidey senses of like not wanting to take on that much risk at that price point. That is the kind of Dynasty brain part that bothers me. So.
Yeah, definitely fair point on him for sure. Let's move on to wide receivers. Looking at the very top of the board, I think when you're looking at the top 6, 7, 8 guys, maybe even the top 10, there's a lot of consensus going on. A few guys shifting here and there depending on personal opinions, but I guess looking at the overall, let's say top 20-ish range, like wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 range, who jumps out at you in terms of current ADP and your rankings of someone you're too high on or too low on heading into 2026?
I'm going to comment on Garrett Wilson. I think we have a deep reservoir, even, 5, 10, 15 deep at wide receiver when you consider pedigrees, but guys that have put up big numbers, and no one really overly old. Like, the old guys are like, ooh, let's pick apart Nico Collins because he's 27, or Justin Jefferson starting to leak oil, and CeeDee Lamb. We're seeing those guys drop down from untouchable to very much touchable in Dynasty. So that's just an observation of things. Like Rashee Rice came through pretty clean. They could have drafted wide receiver early. They did not. So we're just going to kind of get to September, and you can think however you want and value or cross him off your board because of the off-field stuff. But when he plays, he's a target maven, and he's a cog in that offense that has really been taking over when Travis Kelce's been dropping down. So again, we get to September, and Rashee Rice is going to get big volume, and life is going to be, usual again. I'm going to highlight Garrett Wilson, though, because he's constantly been the guy for me that I've observed in the market that everyone gives him a pass. I remember the days of he's just an elite talent, and people had him, at 22 years old, at top 5 Dynasty wide receiver. Like, he was the anointed one. And I think it's a good example of, you can be in this window, and he was Sans quarterback, or let's call it Sans good quarterback. And it really didn't lift the offense. He dominated that offense when you look at his target per route run figures. And he's basically been really reliable they use him a lot. He runs a truck ton of routes. I mean, we're talking the last couple of years, 23, 24. I mean, we're talking 39, 40 routes per game, which is, you're just getting bludgeoned with opportunities. But the problem was the offense just was so lagging. With some of the quarterback situations, Aaron Rodgers when he was there, it just was not great. And now they're hoping, they have Geno Smith, but let's face it, they're on a 2027 trajectory. And so the hope is they fix quarterback by week 1, 2027. They're on a positive trajectory. But my problem is this. They bring in a first-round tight end. They bring in a first-round wide receiver. Garrett Wilson has thrived basically being easily the best guy there. he still may be the best guy there. But for the first time, you look out in a 2 or 3 year window and say, they've got growing pieces alongside Garrett Wilson that may challenge him, may take off, 1% target per route run, 2% target per route run. And Garrett Wilson has not shown to be a guy that can truly lift the lid and say, I'm situation, bulletproof here. He's been, at his best, he's been like a 1.7 yard per route run guy, which is good, passable, but at no point has he really shown elite. And if you want to say it's because of quarterback and the situation's crappy, well, the situation is potentially getting better with quarterback, but you could also say it's never looked more cloudy with level of competition as you see guys like Omar Cooper and Kenyon Sadiq. They also have Mason Taylor from last year that could be growing into a relevant ancillary role here over this window. So I just think it's, relationship status with Garrett Wilson in a situation, it's complicated right now. And it has been usually very clear. I hope quarterback play is better, but I know he's awesome. Well, he's quickly 26, and I've always been a little below market, but now I think you look at the situation, and there's a potential that his big volume is the thing that goes away. And honestly, to this point, that's the one thing you can point at and say, Garrett Wilson has that big volume.
Yeah, I think all valid points. Absolutely. The coaching QB situation is very unclear for the future as well. But what we do know is they spent a round 1 pick on Omar Cooper, spent a round 1 pick on Kenyon Sadiq. So those guys are going to be there for at least the short term here. So very crowded no matter who ends up being the quarterback of that offense. So, over the next couple seasons, Geno Smith, other rookies, et cetera. But yeah, I got him right around consensus, but I totally see the kind of the bear case for him for sure. The one guy I'm low on compared to the expert consensus rankings, and I've flipped these guys, and maybe I look back in a year and say I was overreacting, and we'll see. But I've moved Michael Wilson ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. in my Dynasty.
You did it.
Finally did it. I mean, I had Michael Wilson ranked way higher every week in my redraft rankings last year, seemingly every week over the course of the second half of the season. But Marvin Harrison, I've got him at wide receiver 32. Right now, ECR at FantasyPros Dynasty has him wide receiver 27. On the flip side, I've got Michael Wilson, wide receiver 30. ECR has him at wide receiver 37. So still, the expert consensus is ranking Harrison 10 spots ahead of Michael Wilson. I mean, just to me, like, who's going to command targets at a consistently / elite level? And Michael Wilson proved that week in and week out last season.
You buried the lead too, because the wide receiver 1 on that team is Trey McBride. So it makes things complicated for wide receivers, any wide receiver, when you have such a dominant tight end too. So that's a complexity in the macro. McBride's not going away.
Yeah, I just, we saw, like, we got the nut outcome last season with Jacoby Brissett just slinging the ball in trailing mode every single game,
and still didn't translate.
Yeah, and look, he was banged up a little bit towards the end of the season, but going the first half of the season, we see target share. We see 12 target game, 10 target game, 10 target game, and we're only seeing 12 targets, 33 yards, 10 targets, 66 yards, and the offense just seemed to operate much better with him off the field than on it in the second half as well. And I just think that household name on the back of his jersey is going to continue to prop him up higher in the ECR. And at this point, he's got to prove it for me to show that he's going to take that next step in his career. Maybe he needs a change of scenery, and maybe
it's pivotal, right? I mean, he's gotten 2 years of passes. If his name was Marvin Mims, actually, but just if his name was Marvin Johnson, he would not. This is kind of like the Arch Manning thing, right? I mean, you get a certain level of pass, and he got 2 years of pass because, number one, he's a top 5 pick. I'll go back to this. Just the contested catch stuff. Like, too many of his targets in college were contested, and then that does not translate well. We'll see about Jacoby Lane. He's like the next guy that breaks the model when you look at percent of targets that have been contested, but it's translated over. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a contested catch guy far too much in the NFL. And I think about it this way. If I'm a quarterback and I'm like, am I going to throw it to the guy that I'm trusting to make a 50-50 catch? If so, how many times? That's not going to lead to big enough volume to be what we're looking for fantasy-wise with applied cost. So that's the real complexity. It could have value, red zone situations, man, a highlight play here or there. But I think about, just the meals. You're trying to feed your family as a quarterback, and you're like, I'm not going to just continually throw it to Marvin Harrison Jr. in contested situations. And that's been largely way too much what he has leaned on in 2 seasons. And like you said, Michael Wilson just showed a part of a season that's been better than anything Marvin Harrison Jr. has ever shown. And we're still talking about probably the second fiddle in the offense to McBride. So,
Yeah.
it's very complicated because what if there's not big volume in comeback mode like Jacoby Brissett, a la Jameis Winston again this year? This could be, you mentioned it with Jeremiyah Love. Let's transpose that over. I just don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get a pass, 6-9 months from now, like he has been for 2 years.
Yeah, and you add Love to the mix. That's going to be more targets going to the running backs than we saw last year. And just flip the names. What if it was Michael Harrison Jr. and it was if it was Marvin Wilson, right? Like we would see a huge gap in ADP going into this season. Based off of what happened last season in that offense.
And let's not pretend like Michael Wilson is a complete, a complete nobody. He was a 3rd-round pick, a little bit of a slow burn, but hey, remember we were kids and the 3rd-year breakout was the thing for wide receivers, and now we've microwaved it to year 2, and now it's like if it's not November, your rookie season, and you're producing like a top 24 guy, we kind of talk about you as a bust. And Michael Wilson is kind of on a typical trajectory, especially for a non-round 1 guy, on starting to produce. Things are starting to come together. So you should ask yourself, why not? This is kind of a typical thing that used to occur with development.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm higher on Michael Wilson. I'm lower on Marvin Harrison. There you go. Anyone else you want to touch on at wide receiver here?
A quick one at wide receiver. I would just say for all the folks that were drafting Trey Harris last year, we saw what the Chargers did. They brought in multiple tight ends with Charlie Kohler. They like what they have with Oronde Gadsden. They also now bring in David Njoku. They're going to play more 2 tight end sets. And let's do the math. I don't think Quentin Johnston is coming off the field. I don't think Ladd McConkey is going to see some massive decline. The loser has to be Trey Harris. And, we're looking at a guy that finished easily on the bus track when you look at his year 1 numbers. And so round 2 pick, I think you got to, this is where you hold on to pedigree, but also read the room. Read the room, look at what's happening on this team. And I think Mike McDaniels plus the new tight ends, and I just think he needs 3 wide receivers on the field. And Justin Herbert, I think he's going to be equal opportunity. We might have a bunch of wide receivers and tight ends that are like fringe fantasy viable, but maybe not dominant. So I would just say Trey Harris is one that I think he's turned into a roster clogger in 12 months time. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm not super high on Ladd McConkey just because there's so many things that go around in that offense. One later round, a couple later round wide receivers from the draft that I like. I really do like Bryce Lance. Our rookie prospect model really liked his efficiency versus zone coverage, which we see a lot more defenses playing in the NFL.
Yeah,
I'm a decent amount higher on him versus consensus in my rookie rankings and dynasty rankings as well. I think you mentioned it, right? With like Olave's injury history, with Jordan Tyson's injury history,
it's a dual injury away guy. That's what I like. He's the rare wide receiver handcuff. You could see him boost way up in route. I mean, he could get to 25 routes a game pretty easily if one of those guys starts missing time.
Yeah, and we were considering Devon Bailey at times last year for like.
Kevin Austin was a streamer at the very end of the season, right? He's out there running. Mason Tipton. It's like, well, he's going to run 30 routes. Exactly.
Yeah, I like Bryce Lance as a talent. I think people may be a little hesitant on him because of what his brother's done so far in the NFL, but I don't think we should compare the two there at all. So yeah, interesting prospect there. I want pieces of that Saints offense, and I think he's one of the rare guys in that offense now. Maybe we can get a little bit of a discount. But moving on to tight end here, I think this is as a pretty sneakily underrated tight end class, but after Sadiq and Stowers. I like the second tier. For me personally, in my tier 2, I've got Max Clare, Justin Jolly, Eli Raridon, Tanner Koziel, and Jack Endries all in that mix. I think you can make bull cases for each of them in their given situations, giving their talent profiles as well. I'm going to ask you first, do any rookies specifically jump out to you in terms of guys you're higher or lower on at the tight end position right now?
Yeah, I've ended up with, in the 2 PPRs, I've ended up with Max Clare more than I would have guessed. And I've pivoted quite a bit. And I think it's a really good historical exercise because I really liked Terrence Ferguson a year ago. And yet you look at, he was athletic within a non-athletic class. And then you go over to the next year, and this is a way more athletic class at tight end. So that's the real difference of read the room of what class are we in. And so now we have a bunch of good athletes. And after you draft, this is almost like the Mason Taylor. It's not quite as extreme, but okay, we like this guy. We draft him in the second round. The next year, oh, now we like Max. Now we like Max Clare. So I just think the most recent, if you're tying in pedigree, I think it matters who was drafted most recently. And I'm not going to, I recorded a big long show on Terrence Ferguson. It was almost a funeral for Terrence Ferguson over the last few weeks because, I mean, you look at what he was doing. He was basically a situation. If you remember Jacob Harris, like he was the last like intoxicating, like, oh, look at this movement. And then they roll him out in the preseason and all they do was give him like vertical contested catch opportunities. That's basically what they did with Terrence Ferguson. And I would say, like, you think that sounds exciting, but he converted like 1 of 8 or something. And like, again, he hits all the markers of saying he's basically a contested catch maven, and he wasn't even that good at it. And then the team a few months later says, let's draft a more all-around tight end with round 2 pedigree. That to me is doom for Terrence Ferguson. So he still holds some value in tight end premium, but I would just say be sensitive with Max Clare. I've seen him go early second in the 2 PPRs, but man, when he drifts to the late second or early third, I'm all over it. He's a target player. So you can really get some good deals. And that would be the thing I would highlight. You mentioned all those tight ends. We've got a lot of pedigree. In your round 3, heck, you get like Marlon Klein in round 4, Justin Jolly's going in round 3. These are very Oscar Delp in round 3. I like these are very palatable price points for. You got to be patient. You got to know you're going to stick with the roster spot for a couple years. But these are potential 2027 starters, and these depth charts should not really scare you off of these players in a good class. And the tight end basically told the whole NFL told us what they thought by drafting a lot of these guys on day 2 that we didn't necessarily think were going there.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a great point with the depth charts, right? Because we saw what Tyler Higbee could do just a couple seasons ago, having elite fantasy production. We saw Colby Parkinson in spots have some spike games as well. Now you're drafting that overall, higher draft capital round 2, who can be that next Tyler Higbee go to every down tight end versus the Terrence Ferguson, more of that specialist role. So I could definitely see a world where Max Clare emerges and he's the 1A, Colby Parkinson's the 1B, and Terrence Ferguson is still that gadget guy, right? And I think we saw that as a talented blocker and as a talented, reliable pass catcher at Ohio State for him. And looking at the rest of the depth charts, man, I agree 100%. Justin Jolly in Denver, we're not scared of anybody above him on the depth chart. I don't care if he's a day 3 pick at this point. Eli Raritan, a day 2, good draft capital for him. We're not scared of Hunter Henry on that depth chart, who's aging as well. Tanner Koziol, yes, they drafted Borkature in round 2, but I love Koziol's upside as a pass catching prospect. We're not really afraid of Brendan Strange on that end as well. And even Jack Endries, who had a lot of injuries coming in, but if he can clean that up and get healthy, then he could be in a really high upside PPR role with Joe Burrow and company as well in Cincinnati. So I really like that tier just because of that. I'm a little bit lower on Oscar Delp as a prospect, but then he lands in New Orleans where like I'm trying to grab pieces of New Orleans as much as I can as well. So he's in my tier 2 with those guys, in addition to those guys too. So I guess kind of zooming out from the rookie class, let's look at the overall dynasty rankings. Anyone jump out to you in terms of tight end 1, tight end 2 range that you're high or low on right now?
Yeah, I wanted to. I would say I created a new tier because of Colston Loveland, tier 1.5, because I part of me wants to put him with McBride and Bowers, and then part of me just can't. But I can't unsee like how he played down the stretch of last season is exactly what you want to see from a tight end, which is you want like very few tight ends are running wide receiver like routes. They're actually winning downfield. They're creating vertical and explosive plays. That is nearly non-existent. Tight end is about volume. Every once in a while, you break a tackle, you're loose. He's legitimately winning on routes that wide receivers run. And that was very exciting for me. So I always go back to Ben Johnson takes over the Bears. And what is the first thing he does? The first biggest point he can do, I have this first round pick. What am I going to do? I'm drafting Colston Loveland. That's when they had Cole Kmet. They had this, really good wide receiver depth chart. You figure they don't need this at all. And he targeted that guy who was hyper productive. You look at all the age metrics out of Michigan. So again, I don't think a lot of people, they might have him at tight end 3 or 4 in Dynasty, but I don't think it's high enough because I could see him legitimately challenging. He's 2.5 years younger than Brock Bowers. He's 4.5 years younger than Trey McBride. And that may not be a difference now, but when he's 24 and McBride's like 28, 29, I think we'll start to have a conversation. And I just think Loveland is a riser. The other guy high up that I would say I'm a little more bearish on, or I want to see how this year, it's almost the Garrett Wilson clause. Harold Fannin. Some people put him really high, like number 4, number 5 in Dynasty. I have him 3 or 4 spots lower. And part of that is, again, look at what they did. They just brought in a first-round wide receiver. They brought in an early second-round wide receiver. We're hunting for quarterback, and the level of competition for targets over the next couple of years, all these guys growing together on rookie deals. No quarterback for now. Hopefully they have one in the future. But I just look at this as it's not quite as clear. And if you look back, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, these guys were like dinged up, not playing well. And it was really Harold Fannin rising. David Njoku was horrible last season. And I mean, they got out at the exact right time, the Browns did. And so I look at all these factors, and I just think Harold Fannin, yes, it was a really great rookie season. I'm not going to take that away from him, but sub-sized kind of guy, a little bit of a tweener. And now they add 2 top 40 picks in the passing game, still need to fix quarterback. I think we need to kind of level off what that ceiling looks like. And I think tight end, if you can't sit here and say that a guy can challenge Loveland, Bowers, McBride, like Tucker Kraft was on a heater, like these types of guys, then your ceiling is kind of tight end 5 or so. So be careful overvaluing that.
Oh, you're gonna have the commenters coming after you, man. You're over here.
Is this a pro Fannin crowd?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Dynasty. It seems like the Dynasty audience in general is a pro Fannin, pro Tuten crowd. So I feel like you're gonna get some vitriol possibly on those two takes.
Okay.
But I think it's valid. I mean, I love Harold Fannin as a prospect. I might be a little biased him coming into the league. But I agree that he should not be in that tier with Bowers, McBride, and London.
I mean, he was 1.68 yards per route run as a rookie. Let's not overcook that and pretend like he's in the rarefied era of the Kittles and Gronks and like these guys that at some point you hit like 1.920. And so promising, 21 years old. Again, he eclipsed every single barrier and expectation you could possibly have for him. I just am asking the question of what's next. And it's not like I don't have him in my top 10, but it's just you got to make sure these guys, you don't overcook them, because I do think that ceiling of what you think they're going to actually do in the next 2-3 years is really important.
Yeah, I've got him 4th, but he's grouped. To me, it's like Warren, Fannin, Kraft, Laporta. Take your pick of those 4 guys. I think you can make a case for any 4. And then I think Sadiq is knocking on the doors there as well. I'm not going to go there with Pitts. I thought when Pitts was on the field, when London was on the field, we weren't seeing that elite production from Pitts. So
Pitts has to be like top 3 most fascinating tight ends for this year, right? Like he's the exact, like you want to keep him on the franchise tag. You want to keep him on a 1 year. We finally saw shades of the rookie season again. It was like a 3-year injury hiatus. So It's easy to get intoxicated again, but it also feels like you're just open to getting hurt again, right?
Well, it was all when Drake London was hurt. So I don't really know like what can be. I mean, if London stays hurt, then sure. But
let's not pretend like these 2 quarterbacks are trustworthy to like stay on the field. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons, like they're on quarterback 3 by November. Let's not pull punches here.
I mean, look, I played basketball my whole life growing up, and I was a lefty sharpshooter, believe it or not. So I love me some lefty athletes. I love me some lefty quarterbacks, but those two guys aren't part of my lefty crew. I'm not a Penix guy. I'm not a Tua guy. So
we got to go through your all lefty rankings. That's what we got to do
for sure. But like, I'm just like, great, Atlanta. Now you got 2 crappy left-handed quarterbacks on your roster. Congrats.
See what I want to hear. I want to hear you break down like running backs and wide receivers. Like it's easy to see a left-handed quarterback, but I want to see, do you know who the left-handed tight ends are? That's what I want you to, like, you randomly see him throw a nice spiral with their left hand. You're like, I got him. I finally figured it out. It's not like the baseball cards that we used to have left and right on the back of the card. We don't have that anymore with the tight ends.
I wouldn't even be able to begin telling you what those guys do or who's left-handed or right-handed there. But man, like you got the legends in the NBA. I mean, 2 of my favorites off the bat, Michael Redd, Milwaukee Bucks, left-handed sharpshooter all day. He's definitely on my Mount Rushmore lefties for sure.
It's a July topic. Chris Dell's top 10 non-quarterback lefties in the NFL. That's what we need.
Topic for the offseason.
We need it. We're hungry for it.
Exactly,
Premium only.
Exactly. All right, well that's good. I think we're in a lot of alignment there. Anyone off the board? I mean, kind of going past this, top. Let's say tight end 2, tight end 3 range, whether it's rookie, veteran. One guy that jumps out to me, I'd like your thoughts on is let's talk about the 2 Tennessee guys from last year. Chicka going to Washington, Gunnar Helm now picking up some steam, staying in Tennessee in that very young, potentially promising offense as well. What are your thoughts on those two guys, higher or lower? Where do you have them ranked?
Yeah, I was very bullish on Okonkwo to start his career. Like he was that small sample size, and we want to believe that the routes, go from 10 to 20 or 30, and it kind of fell off. But I would also say Tennessee wasn't very good, and let's not pretend like Okonkwo was horrible. He was still like an average-ish efficiency guy for a starting tight end, and now he gets pretty big money where the market generally was cool on guys like Dallas Goedert and others. So we didn't see many guys get paid. He was one of the guys that did. Got actual starter money. He goes over to Washington. So I am open to the possibilities. We talked about like be prepared to get hurt again. I'm open to getting hurt with Okonkwo again. We'll see if Brandon Ayuk goes there. That might, it's a wild card factor at this point. It's more of an idea than a certainty of like Ayuk playing well. It's been a while since we've seen it. But I look at this offense and say McLaurin's over 30. And what is the next bankable thing in that passing game? And it's a difficult, light pencil sort of answer that you're going to put in there. So I would also say, why not Okonkwo? So kind of bullish on that. I would say Gunnar Helm with the lower pedigree. I think Tennessee doesn't quite have the optimism, say at quarterback, and how functional is this offense going to be overall? And then they bring in a top 5 pick at wide receiver. So I would say Gunnar Helm. I'm a little more skeptical that turns into something that's much of a fantasy factor. And then Okonkwo, I mean, we talked about it outside of maybe 4, 5, 6 guys. We're kind of you're probably open to a lot of different ideas this year. And I think Okonkwo coming out and having, 25 targets in the first 4 games is something that I'm definitely open to.
I feel like Okonkwo is still 22 years old. Like he just hasn't aged because
right.
He's like has the same exact season every single year and like has those 1 or 2 big touchdown catches, but he's 26 now. But obviously better landing spot. I like both. I think I could see myself. Pre-free agency, I was taking a lot of both because I was expecting Chig to end up somewhere else. So I do have a decent amount of shares already of Okonkwo and Gunnar Helm. I'll give you one more current tight end battle: the Giants and the Harbaugh regime bringing in Isaiah Likely, perennial backup tight end, versus Theo Johnson, who I thought, I thought he was a very intriguing prospect coming in as well. I thought he had a very good season last year.
He's the type of day 3 guy you want to take a shot on, right? And it seemed like it was just going to come together, and now they get Likely in and really make it complicated.
Is that like I've got Likely tight end 18 in Dynasty. I've got Theo tight end 24, but the ECR has them 16 spots apart. I only have them 6 spots apart, and I've got them in the same tier. I think it's who's going to perform well and actually win this job. And I'm not going to discount Theo Johnson because I thought he showed some spark last season and some chemistry with Jackson Dart. So I wouldn't count out him being the 1A to 1B for Likely at the end of the season. Yeah.
One other guy I'll have an honorable mention. It's been a weird off season and kind of a weird 12 months or so for Dallas Goedert. The fact that he kind of limps back to the Eagles and then they bring in Eli Stowers, it's a pretty low level, for him, or maybe what we were expecting 2-3 years ago, kind of contrast off. Like we never really got the, sometimes he was ranked in the top 5, but he never really solidified that / gave us reason for optimism to go higher. And now he's, 31 years old. He really dropped like a brick last year in efficiency, and he really got buoyed by, never more than 5 touchdowns in a season. He had 11 last year. Now they bring in Stowers, who, is going to be expected to be the future. Is that going to be more of a committee? I just think with Goedert, he's old enough now, like Dynasty, he invariably takes a hit. My model really doesn't like him when you start looking at career arc stuff, 1-year deal. I still think, but he's probably worth a late second in your hyper premium formats at the position. But there's a lot of guys behind him that I could either see a better season this year, or young guys that you just want to take a shot on and say, even if Goedert outproduces them, give me the guy that's notably younger, could be viewed as the upswing guy, the next Okonkwo, early in his Tennessee career or something. And so I just think with Goedert, he feels like he's aging a little more rapidly. He's had 2 down years in the last 3, and one of them propped up by touchdowns. So I look at all that, and I just think this is probably going to be a season where he's going to have some moments, and you'll look up and he might be like tight end 17 or something, and you'd be like, oh yeah, he was fine, but he really made no difference to your outcomes at all.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking to the future there in Philly overall,
Yeah.
and I think with Goddard, I've got him 11 spots below. I've got him at tight end 29. I've got Stowers right
Oh
around
wow.
consensus at tight end 12. I just don't think you can reasonably rank both those guys in the top 20 because, like you said, there's going to be. I just don't see a long term committee there between those guys. I think either Stowers works or he doesn't. Because will he be able to stay in the field as a blocker right now? Probably not. But it'll be interesting to see how that offense winds up taking shape in the post Kevin Patullo era there in Philadelphia for sure. But yeah, no, it's a lot of really good discussions, a lot of really interesting tight end depth charts and battles to discuss as we get through training camp and OTAs as well. Chad, man, I really appreciate you hopping on. I think we talked originally about possibly getting like 20 player takes on the board. You think we got there? I wasn't keeping track.
We've definitely mentioned at least 20.
Okay.
I think in terms of hitting them hard, maybe we're in the 15 to 18 range. We'll have to have someone tally that up at the end of the day.
I'll take it. I'll get my intern producer, chop up some shorts. We'll get all your Bhayshul Tuten and Harold fan and hatred on the Instagram reels and the YouTube shorts. Don't worry about it, man.
My mailing address and where you can send the rotten eggs are listed below.
That's right, man. So just remind the people again, uthdynasty.com. You're on X at Chad Parsons NFL. What else can we expect out of the UTH Dynasty podcast, website, Patreon, etc.?
Yeah, just to toot my own horn, Bhayshul Tuten my own horn, is best rankings out there just in terms of it's timely. When a notable move happens, you get a podcast 5-10 minutes long. It kind of breaks down the profiles, breaks down the new values, the new depth charts in the trade calculator. So it's not just rankings. It's not just that they're tiered, and frankly, you get more unique stuff on one page in rankings than anything I've ever seen out there. But you get companion podcasts that kind of go into the why. And why they're moving in the trade calculator, why they're moving in dynasty rankings and all that. So it's basically a one-stop shop because you get the explanation and you get here's the price point, here's recent trades, here's if they're a buy or sell, here's some example deals to move in the market and act on this news because we're going to get to the summer, we're going to get to the season, and that's going to be news season, and you're constantly just reacting. And at some point you have to say, this is where the market's going, and it literally can be a matter of hours. So I would just say, make sure your resources are timely because you have to be able to, the news is going to be timely, but getting out in your market in the first 12 to 24 hours is also the timely part before folks catch up and they have a true sense of what that market is moving towards. So yeah, you can definitely find that. And again, rookie drafts are coming up. I know a lot of people have had plenty since the NFL draft. You got more. So you can get that free rookie draft over at patreon.com/UTH. And
Awesome.
great to talk to you. We've been talking, just so folks know, all off season, we've been talking about doing this show, and here we are, Check's Watch. It took about 3-4 months, but here we are having a great time chopping it up with the new reality of player values.
Absolutely, 100%, man. Definitely go check out the rookie guide for sure. Chad, definitely appreciate having you on. Love the work that you're doing in the Dynasty streets. Make sure to follow Chad on X again at Chad Parsons NFL, uthdynasty.com. The link is in his X bio as well. To the Patreon page, you can follow us, leave a rating review at the Fantasy Edge podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. You can find it on my YouTube channel as well, which is at Chris Dell Fantasy. Right now, I'm doing weekly Q&As on the Fantasy Pros Discord for Dynasty, as well as a Reddit AMA on the fantasy football subreddit community. A lot of off-season content to come as well with the launch of the new Fantasy Edge website. We have our Substack newsletter rolling again, so make sure to check that out. The free links to our podcast, Substack newsletter, and Discord community are all on my Twitter bio and at bettingpredators.com. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure to hit us up on X for any Dynasty question follow-ups, etc. And Chad, hopefully we can do this again sometime soon, man.